What a disaster. There's just no other way to describe this. This is a disaster for Major League Baseball. And the excuses are already being made. This is a fascinating matchup on the field, but these teams are not national draws. Yeah. That's an understatement. But the teams not being national draws, that is the symptom to the overall problem. But I want to key in on the first part of that statement. This is a fascinating matchup. 10 years ago, that alone would have been enough to draw respectable ratings for the World Series. Hell, the World Series would have been reason enough to draw respectable ratings. And since there's always someone who doesn't believe me, I went and pulled some numbers. Game 1 of the 2011 World Series between the Rangers and Cardinals, the same Texas Rangers that are playing in the World Series right now, the same Texas Rangers that are supposedly not a big draw nationally. Game 1, 2011 World Series, 16.5 million viewers. But Casey, that was before the era of cord cutting. Cord cutting is destroying the ratings in baseball. The World Series is being broadcast on Fox. Last I checked, there is not a single person in this country having to pay for access to Fox. It's free. I'm also seeing this excuse, at least they are using this excuse for Game 2, that ratings were so low because the game was a blowout. Game 3 of the 2019 NBA Finals, it was a blowout too. The Raptors won by 14 points. Yeah, for some reason, 13.5 million people tuned in to watch. Now, at the time, that numbers was considered to be horrific for the NBA. Today, the NBA would be absolutely thrilled if the finals reached 13.5 million people. They have only eclipsed that number twice in the last 4 years. Earlier this morning, though, we discussed the problems in the NBA. We talked about the players not being fully dedicated to the regular season. We talked about the league making it damn near impossible for fans to follow their local teams on television. The NBA has problems, there's no doubt about it, but the problems in the NBA, they can be fixed. They can be solved. Adam Silver can fix the problems that they're having right now with Bally Sports. Adam Silver can find a way to make the games more accessible to the fans. Now, whether or not he will, that is a completely different story. Like I said, it seems like the NBA is at war with their own fan base. But there is no solution to the problems in Major League Baseball. I don't follow baseball, obviously. And when I give you these demo ratings here in just a second, you're going to find out there are millions more just like me. According to the media, this is supposed to be a fascinating matchup in the World Series. They are praising all of these players that I've never heard of before. I guess some dude named Adolis Garcia had a big game the other night before he got injured. I look at the names on both of these rosters. It looks like the payroll report from some investment firm. Mitch Garver, Evan Carter, Josh Smith. Who in the hell are these dudes? These are the names of some stock advisors at Merrill Lynch. But that shouldn't matter, right? It shouldn't matter that the World Series is lacking in star power because it's a fascinating matchup for fans of Major League Baseball. Isn't that the case? Therein lies the problem. Major League Baseball is no longer a draw. Fascinating matchups, that is no longer enough to draw in viewers on television. Now, baseball's always been reliant on national teams to draw, but there have been times in the past where the product on the field was enough to sustain the ratings. Back in 2019, the Nationals and Astros, they averaged 14 million viewers. Game 7 of that series drew over 23 million. 2 years ago, the Braves and Astros, they averaged almost 12 million, with the final 2 games pulling close to 14 million. In a rare case of good judgment, Major League Baseball, they started the 2023 World Series on a Friday night. They didn't start the game in the middle of the fucking afternoon. They didn't try to compete with NFL Sunday. They selected the one night in the week where there was minimal competition from other sports. The only competition they had on Friday night was a pair of NBA games that was being broadcast on ESPN. Thankfully, the WNBA finals, they had already ended. I know Rob Manfred was extremely concerned about the heavy competition he could be facing from those bearded dump divers in the WNBA. Friday night, though, Major League Baseball essentially running unopposed. Game 1 drew 9.2 million viewers. The least watched Game 1 ever. And if you remove the 2020 World Series, which was played during the period that Fauci fucked America and fans were not allowed to be in attendance, if you remove 2020, this was the least watched game in the history of the World Series. But that's okay. That's okay. Because game one was competitive. This so-called fascinating matchup delivered. The game was decided in the 11th inning. Perhaps it was decided in exciting fashion with a walk-off home run. Hell, I don't know. I wasn't watching. I didn't even know the World Series was starting last Friday night. But with game one ending with an exciting conclusion, Major League Baseball, they were able to build on that momentum. They were able to use that favorable coverage they got from the mainstream media to build their audience for game two, right? I mean, it wasn't like there was a multi-day layoff between game one and game two. Game two was broadcast on Fox the following night. Now, sure, baseball had to compete with college football, but last weekend was kind of a boring weekend in college football. Weren't too many games that featured two ranked teams, and the games that did, like Oregon and Utah, I mean, it was just boring from start to finish. Baseball's biggest competition Saturday night, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Colorado, UCLA. Colorado is finished. They no longer belong in these marquee time slots on national television. America's fascination with Deion Sanders, that fascination is over. So this should have been no problem for Major League Baseball, right? Game two of the World Series, 8.2 million viewers, a decline of 1 million from game one. And even with the 2020 World Series included, this would match the least watched game in the history of the World Series. Again, the news got even worse though, because game three was another huge embarrassing failure. Game three, 8.1 million, the least watched game of this series. And once again, another record low for Major League Baseball. But here's the thing. The overall record low ratings, that's not what is alarming here. This is not the reason that Rob Manfred should be worried. The World Series has been on a viewership decline for the last 5 or 6 years now. Every year the ratings get lower and lower. Started back in 2018 with a matchup between the Dodgers and Red Sox. Now, that should have been a resounding success for Major League Baseball. Two teams with a strong national following. Two teams that represent both the East and West Coast, the two largest population centers in the country. 2018, they drew 14 million viewers, and the numbers have declined every consecutive year since. But here is what is so alarming with this particular World Series. This is the reason that Rob Manfred should be concerned. The 2023 World Series, it has set record low ratings in every single key demo. Friday night, less than 1 million people between the ages of 18 and 34 tuned into the World Series. Saturday night, that number had fallen to 747,000. People between the ages of 18 and 54, which I would assume that age gap represents the majority of adults living in this country. People in that age group, they barely make up half of the World Series audience. That is a serious problem for Major League Baseball. Compare that to the NBA, where 88% of their audience Friday night was in the 18 to 54 age group. Colorado, UCLA, 64% were in that age range. Like I've told you guys before, Major League Baseball is not resonating with younger people. Hell, Major League Baseball, they are not resonating with anyone under the age of 55. Now, I don't consider myself to be young anymore. I'm 38 years old. I guess that's young in a sense, but I mean, I'm knocking on the door of being middle-aged. All of my friends close to my age, you know how many of my friends are watching the World Series? None. Judging by these numbers, we're not alone. There's millions just like us. The problem for Rob Manfred in Major League Baseball, there is no solution to the problem. For starters, with every passing season, it seems like the major players in Major League Baseball are coming from other countries. Why do you think that is? Why is baseball having to recruit so much talent from other countries? This is not a problem in the NFL, not a problem in the NBA. Sure, the NBA is recruiting players from Europe and other countries, but for the most part, the stars in the NBA are from America. So how come Major League Baseball is having to pull more and more talent from other countries? Maybe it's because American youth participation in baseball has never been lower. Kids are not playing baseball like they have in the past. My oldest nephew, he's playing coach pitch right now. The other day, I asked my brother-in-law how many teams were in his division. He said they had 4 teams in the entire league. 4! When I was playing baseball, we had 2 separate leagues filled with 8 teams, 4 teams to a division. Today, they've got 4 teams in the entire league. When you have a league with your best players coming from foreign countries, it just doesn't resonate the same here in America. I don't know why. I can't give you a reason. I just know it's what is. Foreign-born players, they are not the biggest draws in the NBA. Giannis, he is an unbelievable talent, but he doesn't have the same drawing power as Steph Curry. And like I've told you guys all season, there is just no way to make the game of baseball a TV-friendly product in this era of television. It's just not possible. We are living in a society where instant gratification is not demanded, it's the expectation. The other day, I was taking my girlfriend out to lunch. We had some errands to run. Walk into the first restaurant, see a crowd of people in the waiting area, ask how long the wait's going to be. They tell us 30 minutes. We walk right out the door. Now, looking back in hindsight, I wish we would have waited those 30 minutes because as soon as we left there, we get into a car accident in my 4Runner that I just bought 4 months ago. But we both decided 30 minutes was too long to wait for food. We wanted to be seated immediately. When we find a good show on TV that we both like, we want to binge watch it over a couple of days. We don't want to sit there and wait and watch the show from September to May like television used to be. We want to watch the entirety of the show in a weekend. Most shows and streaming services, they have adopted that model. Even with sports, the action in the NFL, for the most part, is nonstop. The game in the NBA is nonstop unless the officials are finding a way to slow it down with their incessant whistles. And then you've got Major League Baseball, where the games are an absolute slog. I think I told you guys this earlier this season that for the first time in years, I actually watched a baseball game this year. They had the Braves game on at the bar I go to for happy hour. Now, to their credit, the pitch clock, it worked as it was designed to work, sped up the pace of play. Problem is, the game was painfully boring. You sit and watch a 3-hour baseball game, and you might get 2, maybe 3 minutes of actual excitement, 2 or 3 minutes of actual entertainment. That just doesn't work in this modern era of television. And there's no way to fix it. There's no way to make the game of baseball exciting. This league is in trouble. I'm telling you, this league is in trouble. Obviously, they're not in financial trouble, but Major League Baseball, they are in real trouble of being left behind. ESPN is slowly getting out of the business of Major League Baseball. You have playoff games being buried on True TV. You have an entire generation that is not watching your product. What are they going to do when their core audience passes away? I mean, I can tell you with 100% certainty that is eventually going to happen. What are they going to do? You've already lost an entire generation, possibly even 2. Give me your thoughts on this. Major League Baseball sets record low ratings for the World Series. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Give me your reason, and don't tell me it's the matchup. Don't tell me it's the teams. Why is baseball struggling to resonate with people between the ages of 18 and 54? Most of the country. You let me know. Sound off in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share the video. I appreciate every one of you guys and your continued support. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.